All right, let's jump right in. In our world, the world of clinical microbiology, you know there are few organisms that are as challenging or as complex as Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's a real master of disguise and an absolute foe in the lab. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the key aspects of this pathogen, really from our perspective as microbiologists. So let's start with a number that really puts all of our work into perspective. 1.8 million. That's how many people die from Mycobacterium tuberculosis every single year. It makes it the deadliest single infectious agent on the entire planet. And that is why a rapid, accurate diagnosis from our labs isn't just a result, it's a lifeline. Just a quick heads up, all the information we're covering today comes from a comprehensive report put together using a Gemini deep search. If you want to really get into the nitty-gritty and see the primary literature, the full notebook with every single citation is available for you to check out. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by looking at what makes Mycobacterium tuberculosis such a formidable pathogen, then we'll dive into its taxonomy. From there, it's into the diagnostic hunt, its incredible innate defenses, modern therapeutic strategies, and we'll wrap up with infection control. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Who is this organism really? I mean, understanding its place in the microbial world is absolutely fundamental to everything else that we're going to talk about. So here's the formal taxonomy, the classic lineup going all the way back to Robert Koch. It's a high G+C, gram-positive bacterium, which tells us a whole lot about its genetics and its evolutionary past. But, as we all know, that gram-positive label is where things start to get, well, interesting and pretty complicated. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. We have this tension, right? Genomically speaking, all the members of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex, the MTBC, they share over 99% DNA identity. I mean, by any modern definition, they should be a single species. But clinically, no way. We can't treat them that way. Being able to differentiate Mycobacterium bovis is critical because it's intrinsically resistant to pyrazanamide, a first-line drug. Get that wrong and the treatment will fail. It's just a perfect example of where clinical reality has to trump our neat taxonomic boxes. And that whole taxonomic puzzle leads us directly into our work in the lab. So let's get into the diagnostic hunt and the day-to-day challenges of unmasking this tricky pathogen. It's one of the first things we all learn in microbiology, right? A classic question. Why does the most fundamental stain in all of bacteriology fail so spectacularly with this one organism? Well, the culprit is its unique cell wall. It is just packed with mycolic acids, which creates this waxy, almost impenetrable armor. This shield is so ridiculously effective that it just repels the crystal violet stain, leaving behind those faint little ghost bacilli on the slide. So how do we get around this? Well, we use its own defense against it. It's brilliant, really. With the Zeal-Nelson stain, we use heat to literally melt the carbofusin dye into that waxy cell wall. And once it's in there, the mycolic acids trap it, so it can't be washed out with acid alcohol. It's this beautiful hack that gives us those iconic bright red bacilli we're all looking for. Staining is fast, sure, but culture is still the gold standard. For years, that long, agonizing wait for colonies on Lowenstein-Jensen media was just part of the job. But thankfully, for a lot of labs, that's a thing of the past, thanks to these automated liquid culture systems that have just slashed detection times. But what if you could just leapfrog weeks of waiting and get a definitive answer in under 80 minutes? That's the power of molecular diagnostics. And it's not just some small improvement, it's a complete revolution in how we manage tuberculosis. So when that report comes through, what are we really looking at? The Xpert Ultra gives us two critical pieces of information. First, is Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex DNA even there? And second, crucially, are there mutations in the RPOB gene that predict resistance to rifampicin? And that trace category, that's a vital addition. It tells us the bacterial load is so low that the resistance test isn't reliable, which guides us to fall back on culture for that specific patient. The reason we need these advanced diagnostics is because of this bacterium's incredible resilience. So how does it do it? How does it manage to evade both our immune system and our drugs? Let's take a look at its multi-layered shield of intrinsic resistance. It's basically a three-pronged defense system. First, you've got that waxy wall acting as a physical barrier. If a drug somehow manages to get through that, you've got a whole squad of efflux pumps ready to actively kick it right back out. And if even that fails, there are enzymes inside the cell just waiting to neutralize the drug before it can do any damage. And here's the beautiful irony in all of this.
The bacterium's greatest strength is also its biggest weakness. Those unique, complex pathways it uses to build that cell wall, they are the exact targets of our most effective drugs, like isoniazid. We literally turn its own armor into an Achilles heel.
Okay, now let's connect our lab work directly to the clinic. How does the susceptibility data we generate actually inform treatment? Well, this requires a really clear understanding of the latest therapeutic guidelines, and of course, the breakpoints. Accurate reporting all comes down to using the latest breakpoints. This table shows the current standards from UCAST and the WHO. The key takeaway here really is that revised breakpoint for rifampicin. This change was absolutely critical to prevent us from misclassifying resistant strains as susceptible, which, as you know, has huge clinical implications. It's just a powerful reminder that our field is always evolving. Now, here's another really fascinating point of divergence: treating kids. For non-severe drug-susceptible TB, major international bodies like the WHO now recommend a shorter 4-month regimen. This is based on solid data from the SHINE trial. But Dutch national guidelines currently stick with the traditional 6-month course. This just highlights that time lag that can exist between new global evidence and when it gets adopted into national policy. So, effective treatment is one massive part of the equation. The other part is stopping transmission in the first place. Let's look at infection control, something that is crucial for our own safety in the lab and for protecting the entire community. The internationally recognized strategy is this 3-level hierarchy. And while we often think about N95 masks and negative pressure rooms, the cool engineering stuff, the most important level is actually the first one: administrative controls. This is the foundation. It means having rock-solid procedures for rapid identification, for isolating patients, and for comprehensive staff training. Everything else is built on top of that. And that pretty much wraps up our tour of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. If this was helpful for you, please subscribe for more explainers on key topics in microbiology. And we really want to hear from you. What are the biggest challenges you face with this pathogen in your lab? Let us know down in the comments. So as our tools for diagnosis and treatment get faster and more effective, the goal of actually eliminating tuberculosis is closer than it's ever been. The question for us, for the people in the lab, is this: how will our role have to evolve to meet that challenge? Thanks for watching.